to make it home. Some deers just jumped right in front of us. It was kind of crazy that I almost hit a deer trying to baby this truck back home. It was so, I mean, we're going so slow, but. All right, here we are, we're home. We're gonna pull in, drop this thing off for the night. So, first things first, we are going to obviously lift the truck up off the ground. And now we're gonna just try to spin the wheels. It is freezing cold out right now. And yeah. Yeah, we're getting some metal grinding noise in the differential, which I figured this whole time it's the diff, so we're gonna drain it out and see what our fluid looks like and determine if that's what went or not. All right, so just like last time, we always wanna make sure our fill plug can be broken free before draining it. All right, gonna slide our drain bucket under here. And I'm already expecting to see silver fluid. Yep, there it is. Of course. Look how slow that's coming out of there. That's terrible. And right here on this magnet, that's all metal shavings. So we're just gonna let this literally sit here for quite a while and just drain right out. And I'll have a video coming your way for it. All right, so we're gonna get right into this. First things first, we're gonna pull off the wheels. So now that we have our wheels off, all we gotta do is put our hands on both sides of this drum and pull it right off. Now your next step, since the drum is off, we're gonna just disassemble all of the rear brake kit. So once you get all the brakes off, all you gotta do is remove the e-brake cable. You pull back the spring that holds it in place and take it out. Then I have some vice grips put on the back of the parking brake cable, and we're just gonna hammer right on this painted surface of the vice grips and just try to pop this e-brake cable right out of the backing plate. All right, so we've gotten our e-brake cable out. Really, really easy. Next step, there's 4 nuts on the backing plate. We got 1, 2, and then 3, 4 at the bottom. It's a 17 socket. I'm gonna put our socket right to the back of those, take them all off, and I should be able to pull my axle out, especially after getting the brake line off. So now in order to pull the axles out, the only thing in our way right now is the brake lines. So what I'm gonna do is I have this hose and I put a bolt in it. I'm gonna put a hose clamp on this side over the bolt and a hose clamp on this side over the brake line. Just to try to, stop any fluid from leaking out, just worth a shot anyway. And then after that, I'll disconnect the brake line and we'll pull the axle out. So after getting the 10mm on this line, it's almost loose enough I can just undo it by hand. And now that it's out, I'm gonna let that sit. I'm gonna take this hose clamp piece or whatever this contraption is that I made, slide it over it and tighten it down. We have our brake line crimped off and we have our nuts out. We can just take this, it's frozen outside, so we gotta wiggle it, and just like that, this comes right out. Oh, look at all that grease, beautiful. At least we know our axle seal's working. Our next step now is we have to remove the drive shaft from the differential. There's 4 nuts and bolts holding it in, so we're gonna pop those off. And lastly, once the drive shaft's off, we have all these bolts that go all around the differential that we need to take off. This is a front-loaded differential. That's basically nicknamed a pig. Once the drive shaft's down in that and we get those bolts out, it'll just pop right off the front. A 14mm wrench. We have the truck in gear and we're just cranking away. And I'm not underneath the truck to get to it, so it's a lot easier. And all we'll have to do is take the truck out of gear, spin the drive shaft, and we can get to the other 2. So after you get the nuts and bolts out, the drive shaft will just drop right down. And then all we have to do now is take our 12mm for the, if yours is a 2-wheel drive, I'm pretty sure the 4-wheel drive's on 14mm, could be wrong. And we just start loosening up all the nuts and bolts. I'm gonna get underneath there, loosen up the left half, and pull it out. All we're gonna do after we get them all off is pull it right out. Oh yeah, look at all that broken metal. Love the looks of that. Look, it can't even spin without getting stuck. Good stuff. Well, at least we know this is completely destroyed. So as you can see there, we got a chewed up pinion in between the spider gears. And look at that. I mean, this thing is just destroyed. So we're just waiting on the new one to come in. While we're waiting for the new one to come in, we just took it out. We're gonna clean up the grease right here. We just did this all in May. This is where our the grease sits. These are our axle seals. Usually you're supposed to pull them out. I'm gonna kind of cheat through this, I'm sorry, but we're gonna leave them in, and I'm gonna clean up all the grease right here. We're gonna spray in a bunch of brake cleaner and everything. I'm going to put a bucket underneath our diff, and we're going to try to get this as clean as possible so we have no metal shavings. So just for educational purposes, you can see here, I actually don't know what these scuffs are from, but you can see here how that pin is broken. This is what that pin should look like, nice and smooth. I mean, that thing is just destroyed, so it started to eat the biggest gear. But yeah, this thing just looks so clean. It looks so good, just like that one did not too long ago. I mean, look at those splines compared to that. So our next step is we were going to order a new gasket. Instead, we're just going to run some gasket maker. It'll be completely fine. So right now, all I have to do is I have some rags. I'm going to cut them up, and I'm going to take a clothes hanger, and I'm going to put rags on a clothes hanger and push them all the way through the axle case and try to wipe down the axle case as much as I can to get as much metal out as possible. So here we are right now. What we're going to do is we're going to spray some brake cleaner on these shafts. I'm going to take a rag and clean them all up. And then, you know, you can see the silver just on these. And then also, we're going to repack our bearings with grease. We're just going to basically take our hands, put grease on our hands, and stuff it right in there. So we're going to clean these up, pack those, and bring them on over to the truck. So we are now under the truck with our new differential. We're going to put some gasket maker around the housing and pop that into place. And just like that, we plopped it up into place. And you can see all of the bolts are tightened. The red gasket maker's coming out of the sides of it, so that'll have to dry. I think it's like a full day cure. So we're gonna let that sit. But while I'm waiting for that, we're gonna toss on this drive shaft next. So right here we have our nice and clean drain plug. We're gonna put it back in the axle casing. If I can get that on straight, sorry. And now we just gotta tighten it right up. Alright, so now that we have our diff in, the next thing you want to make sure is all your actual shims are in place. And we are going to slide this in, try to match it up with the splines once it gets into the differential. Need to make sure everything goes right into place. Beautiful, just like that. So now that the differential's in place, we got our drive shaft tightened. We're gonna take our 17mm socket, put it on the back of the backing plate, and tighten up the 4 bolts that hold it in place. So now I'm gonna take off my little contraption. We're gonna put the brake line back in the back of the wheel cylinder, and we're gonna put our e-brake back in the slot where it goes. So your differential fluid is this 8090 SAE non-limited slip gear oil for the Nissan Hardbody. And what you do is you just basically, you take this, you put it in that fill plug, and you just keep spraying it in there until it starts oozing out of the top. Once that happens, your fluid is full. So the next step now is to get the brake shoes back on, and then we can put our drum on. So by the end of it, this is what your brake should look like. We have everything in place where it needs to be. We have the leading shoe right here, and then we have our parking brake right here. The parking brake has a longer shoe, so that looks great. We're gonna put the drum on, and what we're looking for is once the drum goes on, we wanna be able to spin it until we hear a little bit of dragging, just a hair of dragging. And right here you can adjust your shoes going in and out with that adjuster right there. So we're gonna pop that on now. So all I did too, since these are slightly used drums, is I just took some brake cleaner and we cleaned them all out. Now we're gonna throw the wheel back on, and I'm gonna do the same on the other side. Lastly, all we need to do now is bleed our brakes. It's either an 8 or 10mm wrench that we need to put up on that bleeder screw above the brake line. I'm gonna have Travis press the pedal 3 times. And when he does that, I'll crack the bleeder screw open. It'll let out the air. And once we do that, the truck should be drivable. We gotta let it cure for the next like probably 12 hours. So we'll come back in the morning and test drive the truck and make sure everything works as it should. Well, alright guys, so that's how you change the differential in your Nissan Hardbody, specifically a 5-speed 2-wheel drive. Man, this thing looks great. We're so excited to have this back on the road. It only took us about 2 weeks, you know, downtime to get that thing in, but you know, just waiting for things to ship in. We really only have about 3 days of work worth into it, and it was like 22 degrees out when we were working on it, so you know, we kind of just pushed through. But thank you so much for checking out the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.